Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of New England Sports Weekly. I am your host, as always, Sean Metcalf, and I am happy that you've decided to join me. If you're watching the live stream this evening, sorry if it's a little bit late. There was an accident actually on my way home, and I wasn't exactly what I was expecting. Hopefully, everybody that was involved is healthy and hopefully wasn't too bad. But yeah, it was a pretty backed up accident by the bridge near where I live. So I wasn't not what I was expecting. So I had to turn around and take the long way home. So got in here a little bit late this evening, but don't worry, folks. We'll have you covered for Patriots Ragnarok as Tom Brady makes his return to Foxborough this week. So that's going to be the main focus of the broadcast, as that's pretty much been everything this week, no matter where you turn. You watched the Sunday night football game last week, Packers and the 49ers. They had that promo ready to go at the very end of the game. No matter where you listen to, sports radio, TV, online, all over social media, it's everywhere. It's Brady, and it's pretty much everything anybody has to talk about right now. It's balls to the walls, Tom Brady. It's pretty much like it was right after he left. It's that 3 months. God, it's pretty much hasn't stopped since he left, if you want to really be honest about it. But it's Brady centric, and that's going to be our show too. So this is the show for Patriots fans and Tom Brady fans, NFL fans in general. We're going to break down every single angle of this show of Tom Brady and his return to Foxborough, as he'll set foot in Gillette Stadium as a visitor for the first time ever. But before we dive into that, like I said, I am glad you folks have decided to join me as we get into the first official full week of fall here. It's kind of depressing now to know that summer is over. Not too happy about that, but it was nice. Was on vacation last week, so I hope you folks are hungry for some sports. As it was interesting to be on vacation and have some fun, spend time with my family, but it's nice to be back here and doing the podcast. So I'm going to bring it tonight. Gonna bring it like Tom Brady probably is going to lay the hammer down on the New England Patriots, as sad as that is to say. That'll be how hopefully his podcast goes off tonight. Without further ado, we'll get right out of the box. As I mentioned off the top of the show, it is Tom Brady week. Brady makes his once a triumphant return, because he's not going to be putting on a Patriots uniform. He's going to be making his return nonetheless, though, stepping into the visitors' locker room at Gillette Stadium come 8:15, 8:20 on Sunday night as they play the Patriots. And we'll cross our fingers and hope the Patriots have some miracle up their sleeve. But like I said, I have a feeling this might be a bloodbath, but we will touch on that here in just a moment. And from some more Patriots news, not good on this end, is James White in last week's game against the New Orleans Saints suffered a hip injury. And there was some speculation maybe he might be ready to go. Maybe he could play this week. Maybe it wasn't as serious, but as the week progressed, it kept getting worse and worse, because he was out indefinitely. And then by today, they officially placed him on the season-ending IR, which is sad to see, because that he is one of the core Patriots. Yes, he may not be a superstar, but he is this generation's Kevin Falk. Well, I grew up during Kevin Falk, but he is this generation of the 2010 through 2021. So this 11-year stretch, he's pretty much that generation's Kevin Falk, where he's not going to rush for 1,000 yards a season, but he's a guy that you can depend on to catch a lot of balls, be a guy that gets third downs, put him in occasionally. He can still rush. He's still a decent rusher. So in a pinch, he'll get you some yards on the ground, but mostly he's that safety valve for a quarterback. So that'll be interesting to see how this goes the rest of the way. Not just this week, but when you get deeper into the season, when there are some of those 50-50 games that the Patriots are in with some of those teams that they might have a really good shot at actually knocking off, not these super teams like the Bucks, but we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get deeper into the show. But as far as the New England Patriots are concerned, that is not good news. As he is out. Hopefully, it sounds like Trent Brown, may be back this week. He's trending in the right direction, so they'll possibly get Trent Brown back, which would be a boost for that offensive line if he's able to play against this loaded Tampa Bay Bucks defense. Although the Bucks are dealing with some injuries along that line, as JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul, is going to be out of this game, so that's some good news for the Patriots. The Buccaneers also did sign former Seattle Seahawks and San Francisco 49ers corner Richard Sherman today to a 1-year, $2.25 million deal. So he'll be suiting up for the Bucks. So that the last time he took a field against the opposition when he was in a Niners uniform, he did not look the same. I mean, obviously he's getting up there in age, but still, he hasn't been one of those corners that has aged gracefully. He's not the Champ Bailey, not the Darryl Green. Even Ty Law, you could throw him into that category. Not in the same, because he did have a little bit of fall off once he started to hit 34, 35. But still, you put him right in that category. But nonetheless, Richard Sherman, you can't stick him in there. At one time, was arguably the best corner in all of football. He was right up there with Darrelle Revis, right there with Stephon Gilmore. So he was a top 5 at worst in his prime. He was amazing to watch. Part of that Legion of Boom out there in Seattle. Fun guy to watch. But we'll see how this goes. A little long in the tooth. Tampa was desperate for some corners. We'll get into that as well. And the Boston Red Sox dropped a 3-game series to the New York Yankees last weekend. The Yankees have taken over the first place in the wild card, although the Red Sox won yesterday and snapped a 4-game losing streak. And the New York Yankees lost to the Toronto Blue Jays, So now the Red Sox are 1 game behind the Yankees for the first wild card spot. They are clinging on to that second wild card spot, although a surging Seattle Mariners team is only a half game behind Boston, although the Red Sox do have half a game. And the Toronto Blue Jays, as we just mentioned, are playing the Yankees. They're a game behind Boston for that second wild card spot. So the Red Sox still have a good shot here because they're playing bad teams in the Orioles, although they're losing 3-1 right now in the top of the 5th inning to the god-awful Orioles. So that's kind of depressing looking at it from that standpoint, that you're not doing work against the against the Baltimore Orioles. And then on top of that, they do face the Washington Nationals next week. So not a strong strength of schedule for the Red Sox. So hopefully they can turn things around here as we get into this last weekend of the series, and hopefully they're able to hold on to one of those wild card spots. But as we mentioned, the biggest story of them all, for all of you listeners out there this week, is probably going to be Tom Brady. And a shout out to my boy Tyler Toothaker. Glad to see that you're listening tonight. I'm happy that you're out there listening. Glad to have all kinds of new listeners out there. But as we mentioned, the biggest story is going to be Tom Brady returning to Foxborough. And he played 20 years in a Patriots uniform. 20 years. I was 10 years old when he became this Patriots starting quarterback back in 2001. So that tells you something. I'm 30 now. So pretty much all of my life, all of my sports watching life at this point, Tom Brady was the guy. He was the king for the Patriots. And he ruled the NFL probably after about 2007 when he became his first MVP award. And it's all been gravy ever since. And then, of course, we all know what happened in 2019. It was his last year. He ended up leaving New England and signing with Tampa Bay. We all know he won a Super Bowl last year with the Bucs. And now he will be putting on a Bucs uniform and walking into the visitors' locker room for the first time ever at Gillette Stadium come Sunday at about a little before 8:30. And I think that whole mystique about Brady in that Bucs uniform, or not mystique, but that whole kind of gut-wrenching feeling that seeing Tom Brady in a Bucs uniform, that I pretty much got over that last year. It took probably, I don't know, a good 5 months after, probably about up until the Super Bowl, where you finally felt not comfortable, but it's like, all right, he's gone. He's in a different uniform now. So I don't think that's going to be as bad seeing him in a Bucs uniform as it was to start last year. But it's still going to be odd seeing him at Gillette Stadium. That's going to be the weird part, is seeing him at Gillette Stadium in a Buccaneers uniform and not suiting up for the Patriots. And of course, there's been a million different storylines coming into this game. Now, the theater of this game is going to be more entertaining than the game itself, if you ask me honestly, because this game is not going. I don't think there's any chance in hell the Patriots are going to win this game. I hate to say that as a lifelong Patriots fan. It sucks that they're probably going to end up being 1-3 after this week is over. But if you're going to be honest, Tom Brady, we all know from the 20 years that he was here how good of a quarterback he is. And after he loses, because the Bucs lost last week to the Rams, and we all know that Tom Brady doesn't take losing lightly. I know nobody should. It's obviously that's a given. But we just know how maniacal of a competitor Tom Brady is. So it'll be interesting to see how Tom Brady comes out, and I think he's going to come out here with a vengeance. We all know that he's going to want to show all his former teammates, especially the front office, Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft, that he made a huge mistake letting him go. And so as far as the game itself, we'll get into that in a moment here, as far as breaking that down and how I think this is going to end up going for the Patriots and what they would need to do to maybe squeak out a win. But really, honestly, though, this game is about kind of the build-up, about the theatrics of this all, and really why Tom Brady left, Bill versus Tom. And I know there's some people out there, I've heard Michael Irvin, I heard Rodney Harrison earlier today, that is pretty much they don't want to focus on that aspect of it. But really, that's kind of what this is boiled down to, because we all know things didn't go well for for this organization as far as the relationship with Brady and Belichick, probably after about 2017. So obviously this is the first year I've had this podcast, so I never got to talk about any of that whole situation about 4 years ago, when all that started to happen with Jimmy Garoppolo. Obviously that could take a whole 3-hour show, so we're not going to delve into every little bit and piece of that. It's going to be a long show. But basically, the shorthand version of this, if you all remember, back in 2017, it was around Halloween, week 7, 8, right around the trade deadline. Jimmy Garoppolo's contract was going to be up at the end of the year. And if you remember, Jimmy Garoppolo and Tom Brady share the same agent in John Yee, excuse me. And obviously, you knew that there was going to be, you knew they couldn't just afford to have both quarterbacks on the same roster. And the Patriots ended up making the right decision. They chose Tom Brady, who had won the Super Bowl the year previously, went back to the Super Bowl that year, played the Eagles. They lost to the Eagles, which that's a whole other story. They should have won that one. They should have played Malcolm Butler. That's still a mystery that I don't think we'll ever resolve. Belichick's going to take that to his grave. So I don't think we're ever going to know unless Butler comes out with a tell-all after he's retired. But then, of course, then he wins one more Super Bowl in 2018. So we all know Brady ended up winning this game. I mean, Brady ended up surpassing any of our expectations in his last 5 years because quarterbacks have really never passed the age of 40, with maybe the exception of Brett Favre when he was in his age 40, 41 season, brought the Vikings to a championship, NFC championship game. But other than that, it's really been littered. I'm not even going to throw in Peyton Manning because Peyton Manning was an absolute skeleton of himself when he won that Super Bowl in 2015. He was throwing up some lame ducks out there. That's something that anybody could have thrown those one. Well, maybe I don't know about me, but but that was something out there that he was throwing 20-yard, 30-yard ducks that I'm surprised he didn't end up having about 20, 25 picks that year. So I won't throw Peyton into that discussion. But Brady's, anyways, he's gone off, had an amazing last 5 years in his 40s. And basically what started this for me, what basically started this whole thing was they had to choose. They had to choose between Garoppolo and Brady. And of course, like I said, they made the right choice. I don't know if Belichick wanted that because it seemed like Belichick wanted to move on to the succession plan and go to Garoppolo, which, I mean, you can't fault him for wanting to go younger and bring in a rookie quarterback or somebody that you've at least had in the system 3-4 years, because nothing's going to last forever. I know that's cliche, but we all know that. But obviously Brady's proven, not that he's going to play forever, but Brady's proven that he is abnormal. He goes against the grain when it comes to father time. Because even look at Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, even when he won all those titles late in his career, when he had that six titles and just had those couple of years in between, when he left and went to the Wizards, he still averaged 20 points, but it was not Michael Jordan. He wasn't the late 80s, early to mid 90s Michael, who absolutely was the greatest player of all time. He wasn't that when he went to Washington. Tom Brady still is. Maybe not 2007 Tom Brady, not 2010 Tom Brady, who won a unanimous MVP, but he's still at the top of his game. He's still arguably top 5, top 3 quarterbacks in the league right now. And that's amazing to say with how old he is. So they obviously they made the right choice from that standpoint of sticking with him, but I don't fault Belichick for trying to go younger, get in somebody that you could try to revamp that whole organization with and try to maybe get it on another 10-year run. Of course, as a Patriots fan, I'd love that if you could have another guy in there, extend this dynasty for another 10 years. Of course, I would have loved that. But at the time, thinking back at that, going back in time, I wanted the Patriots to stay with Tom Brady. And I know that's the easy choice, but still, I was never a huge Garoppolo fan, not because I didn't think he couldn't be an NFL quarterback. I just have seen, even when he came into the league, remember 2016, he got hurt right away after that. Well, he played well in the first game, but then that second game against Miami, Jimmy Garoppolo landed on his shoulder on a way he should have, that I've seen a million other quarterbacks land in a better direction so that they're not busting up their shoulder. And that's exactly what happened. He lands on his fucking shoulder, and then there goes, boom. He's done for that game. He was out, and then he didn't play the remaining 4 games that the remaining 2 games that Brady was out with a suspension. So I just thought Jimmy was fragile from the start, from the get-go, when he actually put on a Patriots uniform in the regular season. So I never was a fan of Garoppolo from the standpoint that I just don't think he stays healthy. I just think he's injury prone, and he's proven that in San Francisco. He's good when he's on the field. He's just a little bit above a game manager if I would put it that way. He's I think using the term game manager is a little bit insulting to him, because just look back at that season when they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. He basically helped that 49ers team beat the Saints in a shootout. So he's good. I don't think he's going to be a top 5 quarterback. He's somebody you can win with if you can find a decent backup. But I was never on that train because I just thought he was always injury prone. And then, of course, there were some other things that were going on during this whole time. They had Belichick. There were rumors that Belichick was angry because Kraft had to step in and had to tell him, no, you can't, you have to keep Tom around, whether that's true or not. So that's where maybe a little bit of this rift just kind of started to go. And there was the whole thing with Brady's trainer, Alex Guerrero, who I know, if you really look into it, I don't think it was Belichick actually didn't want Guerrero on the sidelines, didn't want him around. I just think once they started to have that rift, once they started to drift apart, when there was like, well, were you going to keep me around? Stop jerking me around. Give me a contract. I'm worth it. Give me the Drew Brees deal. Give me a 2-year, $50 million deal, 25 guaranteed. And then when they started jerking them around like that, then that's where I think that rift started to go, because then that's where Belichick didn't want Guerrero there, not because he didn't believe in what Guerrero does, because if you look at it, even way back in 2004, Guerrero worked with Willie McGinnis. He worked with Rodney Harrison. He worked with Christian Fourier. Just ask a lot of these, well, not ask them, but if you just go look up these stories or even look it up, you'll see that a lot of Patriots throughout the years have gone to Guerrero, not just Brady and Gronk. So I think that narrative kind of got skewed a little bit where, oh no, Belichick just wanted Guerrero gone because there was the whole rift between him and the training staff, where if you really look into it, it was just, I think Belichick didn't want Brady to have his binky on game days. It was pretty much a pissing contest between the two of them, and not that it had nothing to do with Belichick not believing in Guerrero. So if you couple that with the contract, put in the Guerrero situation, I think that's where Brady said, F it, I'm done with this. And then there's been all kinds of behind the scenes bickering and all kinds of things that have started to leak out, where if you want to believe it or not, that's kind of up for debate, just because there's second, third, fourth hand, not to steal Belichick's comment from earlier from today, but it's really been kind of a second, third hand, fourth hand type of stories where obviously Brady's not going to say anything. Belichick's not going to say anything. Kraft's not going to say anything, because they still want to at least keep that facade of a relationship up there. And so I'm not saying that what's come out has all been false, but it's really been, I think there's been some embellishment of the truth here is what's happened with the Patriots and Belichick and everybody involved in Brady. So that's where things really started to happen, where I think just Brady had enough. And then if you pile on top of that, it was Brady wanted more weapons. He wanted more say in how the team was built. And Belichick's stubborn. And I mean, you can't fault him for it. 20 years of greatness, 20 years of him and Brady winning 6 Super Bowls, going to 9 Super Bowls. I mean, honestly, I thought the Patriots didn't give Brady enough in his last 2 years here. 2017, they did go out and get Brandon Cooks. And I do like Brandon Cooks. I thought they probably should have signed him long-term. But after 2018, 2019, Brady and the Patriots, the cupboard was pretty much bare. It was Edelman, a banged-up Edelman, and a banged-up Gronkowski. How they ended up winning in 2018, that was beyond me. It was based on they ended up having a pretty good running attack. But still, when they had to throw it, all you had was Edelman and Gronk, and then you had a washed out or a bust of a first-round pick in Philip Dorsett that they got from Indy. So that's pretty much all that you had. So it's not – I don't fault Brady for wanting more weapons, wanting to leave to go somewhere else, because, I mean, they didn't give him anything. And then when they tried, they went and got Antonio Brown, who absolutely went batshit crazy and ended up having that whole domestic charge, and that was a whole nother story in and of itself, where he got accused of some pretty bad things there and sent some text out to his, I don't know if a baby mama or who it was exactly, but there was it was a trainer that he was involved with down in Florida. Then there were some pretty scathing reports there about him kind of coming out with his clothes off and exposing himself and trying to force her into doing some things that she didn't want to do. So it was all pretty pretty sketchy from Antonio Brown's end of things. So that didn't end up going well for the Patriots. So he played one game in Miami, so that went out the window. Josh Gordon ended up getting bagged for pot again, so he ended up leaving. So you were stuck with the same weapons again in 2019, and then you went out Mohamed Sanu, who got injured. So he had nothing. So Brady ended up leaving for reasons I don't blame him for wanting another contract, wanting to get paid what he's worth. And if you're not going to spend that money on weapons for Brady, then give him the money. Give him what he's worth. The man's played, at that point, he had played 18, 19 years in the league. He deserves at least a 2-year, $25 million a year contract. And then maybe you try to go out there, make some trades, and get him some weapons. And I know at some point you have to try to reset the cap. So so you can't blame Belichick either for that. But it's to me, I sided more with Brady at that standpoint. And through the whole process, I pretty much sided with Brady up until about this week, where they've kind of unnecessarily fired shots at the Patriots organization, where, I mean, this organization gave you everything. They gave you a starting job. You got one of the best coaches of all time. You had unprecedented success. You went to 9 AFC title games in a row later on in your career, won 6 Super Bowls. And just to have your father kind of come out and do your whole bidding this week, that was the part that it made me laugh a little bit. And to quote his father, "damn rights." That was funny. If you haven't heard that press conference, go out and listen. Well, not press conference, that interview with Brady's dad. Go out there and listen to it. But it just made me laugh that you had to have your dad go out and speak for you. That was the part where, like I said, the last two years or year and a half, I've been on Brady's side of this. But this last couple of weeks, it's just been, all right, the mudslinging is getting kind of ridiculous at this point. Yeah, you ask your father, you're a 44-year-old man. If you want to say something, just come out and say it about the Patriots. Just come out and say it. I don't have your father, like you're 10 years old, come out and talk for you. That's the part that just drove me nuts. You're not old, but you're an older man now. You've been in the league forever. Just come out and just tell your dad to shut up and then talk for yourself. And then to have Guerrero just slap the Patriots right in the face, where if you really look into it, because Guerrero basically, I'm not directly quoting him, this is paraphrasing him. It's basically he came out and was saying the Patriots didn't respect Brady, that they basically pushed him out the door at the end, and was just kind of going backwards on the Patriots organization, who he's worked with so long. Where, again, this is where I don't think Belichick really had anything wrong with Guerrero. I just think Belichick was using Guerrero as a pawn in this whole situation, and just kind of using him as to kind of piss off Brady during his last couple of years there. So it's just been it's not disappointing. It's just been so frustrating to just kind of get this level of mudslinging that's kind of been going on here over the last couple of weeks. It's like, what do you have to be upset about, Tom? It's you went off, you got your weapons, you got everything you needed in Tampa Bay. I can't fault you for going and doing that when they didn't give it to you here. And you don't appreciate this last 20 years that you had before you left for Tampa. And I know sent this last week after those comments from his father's gone out, I know he's kind of backtracked himself and said it, but he had to kind of play the PR game. But it's just been ridiculous. And there's actually a new book that just came out from Seth Whikersham, who's been a writer with ESPN for a long time. He actually had a book that came out back in 2017 that chronicled the whole situation, actually with him, not him specifically, but with Brady, Belichick, and Kraft, So he wrote one book already regarding the situation. So supposedly he gained a lot of access to the Patriots front office to supposedly. Now we'll see obviously last book wasn't as inflammatory as I thought it was going to be. And while I'm pulling this up, if you remember, Belichick got asked about this whole book, that the new one that Seth Whikersham ended up writing in the press conference yesterday during the Wednesday. And he basically went out and said that, yeah, he's heard about the book. He's heard a lot about it, but it's hearsay. It's a lot of second, third hand, or fourth hand information that he says is pretty much it. Basically, it's fake news is what he's calling it at this point. So it's interesting to see what's going to come out of this book, because right now it's just excerpts of what happened or what's going to be in this book. So it's not everything that's in there yet. So bear with me for just a second. But basically in that book, there was a quote from Robert Kraft. This was my favorite one in here that kind of highlights how this situation was going. So just to put it in perspective, this was 2018 when the Patriots were playing the Detroit Lions, and they had, I think at that point they were 1-1, or they weren't playing great at that particular time. That's when they got off to that slow start. But Kraft was out in Colorado, out in Vail with some type of conference, and he was talking with his friends that were out there, and he said that, I don't want to go home. There's a lot of smart people out here, a lot of great people out here, and then I have to go home to that a-hole. I have to go home to this effing a-hole, the biggest son of a bitch out there. So basically, Robert Kraft was not happy at all with his situation with his owner, supposedly. Now that's the part of the book that I had some issues with. We'll talk about that in a second. And then there was another part of the book where basically, apparently, Bill Belichick did a whole study for the Patriots, and a lot of like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Roger Federer, and Tiger Woods, a lot of the top athletes, because he wanted to kind of see what makes those guys tick and how things go. And basically what they found out there was that a lot of those guys ended up playing pissed off. They got more motivated when they were angry, when there were situations that were more negative. But apparently, based on this excerpt from the book, that he plays better when he's in a more caring environment, which that part I call BS on. I really do, because Brady, how many times over the years did things like Deflategate, did Spygate, things like that motivate him? Anytime he lost, anytime there was something negative, he went out there and played his ass off. Maybe the last couple of years, maybe you could throw in him being needed positive reinforcement, but this is a guy that always played with a chip on his shoulder, always played better when he was pissed off. That's why I think this week it's going to be a bloodbath for the Patriots, because Brady's going to be pissed off that one, he lost, and then now he's coming back to his former employer. So I don't buy that part of the book. There's just something about that I don't. Maybe them doing the study, I can buy them doing the study. Let me put it that I can buy them doing a study to kind of see what motivates somebody later on in their career, a great athlete. But the whole positive reinforcement, I don't buy that at all. Brady's the type of guy that's going to slit your throat while you sleep so he can get a competitive advantage. He's an MFer. But in the best way possible. You better, like he said in his documentary, Tom versus Time, you better put your life on the line, because I'm putting mine there as well. So I don't see him as a quote unquote positive reinforcement type of guy. But when it comes to Tom and this team, or when it comes to Tom Brady, I in that excerpt in the book as well as with Robert Kraft, it that one really made me laugh. It's just because if you wanted Belichick gone, if you thought Belichick was such an SOB, was an a-hole, why did you continue to employ him? You're the owner of the team. You can say no. You can say no, I'm going to fire your ass. You're gone. This is your last year, this is your last week. And you can say bye. I just don't see that. I don't see why if Kraft is calling him an a-hole, an mf'er, why he would keep him around then at that point. I mean, you're the goddamn owner of the team. You can say no, get out of here. So that part of the book as well, I just didn't buy that. Now, I will put blame on Robert Kraft and this whole situation of Brady not being there, because just like with Belichick, if you think he's an SOB, he's an MFer that you don't want him around, then just like that, you can also say that you want Tom Brady to stay as well. You can step in. Now, I know it's Brady's ultimate decision if he wants to come back, but still, you're the owner. You can override Bill. You can say, no, I want Brady back. I'll open up my checkbook. I'll give you a 3-4 year deal for $100 million for all he cares. It's his money, but just to kind of paint the picture, like Robert Kraft, it has to go back to Belichick, this son of a bitch that doesn't want to do any of this. No, I don't. That's the part that made me laugh the hardest at this whole book. So when it comes to these stupid tell-all books, I hate tell-all books unless you actually give sources. Put your balls on the line and actually tell me who your source is. As somebody who went to school for this stuff, it just drives me crazy. I know you're going to have, you're not always going to have somebody that's going to want to say who they are in a story, for like if you're dealing with somebody that committed a crime, something like that. I can understand that, but we're talking about football, for Christ's sake. You can tell me, yeah, you might not have some friends afterwards, but come on, we're talking about something in the scheme of things that's mundane. So this just drives me crazy that he didn't give any of his sources in this, at least in the excerpts that have come out. So it's just been disappointing, at least what's come out. But we'll see how it goes. But if you look over at the game, this game on Sunday, like I said, it's going to be a bloodbath. If even if you had Stephon Gilmore there, I'd feel better about it if he was there playing, because then you would have two good you'd have a number one corner and then your number two corner in JC Jackson to play against the Buccaneers. You'd have Gilmore, who you could slot on either Goodwin or Marquis or Mike Evans, because I don't think Antonio Brown, it doesn't sound like, even if he plays, he's still coming off the COVID IR list. So he's still dealing with a little bit of that situation. But then again, either way, if he plays or not, they're still, even if he doesn't play, I should say, they're still loaded at wide receiver, because even Scotty Miller is a good 3 or 4 option. But even if you had Stephon Gilmore to lock down one of those guys, they still have way too many weapons. If Gronk ends up playing, I know he's banged up, he's got the rib injury, but even if he plays, that's still going to be a tough situation for the Patriots to guard. They have so many weapons and Brady's going to be so motivated. He's going to ram this down the Patriots' throat, and he's not going to let off the gas pedal. I know you've heard some people like, oh, maybe he's going to be a little bit apprehensive. It's his old organization, but the way the competitor that Brady is, he's going to ram it down their throats, and there's going to be no mercy. Like I said, the Patriots are going to, even if they had a full strength roster, it would make it really hard on this team. So really, the only way that the Patriots, not the only way, but if the Patriots are going to win this game, you're going to have to hope that the Bucks go through a whole rash of injuries, that maybe they're dealing with COVID, maybe they're dealing with some flu. Brady actually today sounded really sick. He did his press conference and he sounded awful. And he made some jokes about it, but he looked like death warmed over today. So I'm not wishing anything on anybody, but he didn't look great. So maybe Brady does play like crap because he feels like crap. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm not going to pin all my hopes on them being sick. I'll put it that way. But just from the standpoint of this game, I've just all week long, hell, since the season started and all off season, I've tried to cook up ways that how the Patriots could win. I know you could sit there and say, well, control the clock. They've done it against Patrick Mahomes. They almost did it last year. Yeah, but to me, the Kansas City Chiefs are a little overrated when it comes to their offense because it's Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Don't get me wrong. And Mahomes, those trio is really good, but that's just three guys. This whole Bucs offense, like I said, they have Evans, Godwin, Antonio Brown, who's starting to come around. And then you also have Scotty Miller, Rob Gronkowski, OJ Howard. The Kansas City Chiefs, they don't have a lot of depth after Hill and Kelce. They really don't. For a while, Sammy Watkins, he's been up and down. To me, he's a bust. You have McCole Hardman, who's more of a return specialist. But basically with this Bucs team, yeah, you can try to control the clock, but even if, let's just say that you held the ball for 35 minutes, 38 minutes, that's still 22, 23 minutes that the Bucs still have that they're out on the field with all those weapons, all the weapons that they have. That's going to be tough as hell for the Patriots to defend. Even if, because we've all seen you give Brady 2 minutes, a 2-minute drive, he'll go down there and slice you up. So Brady, Brady can put up 28, 30 points probably within the span of that time frame. So I just don't see, even with ball control offense, how they're going to be able to do it. Even when they had Tom Brady and they played ball control offense in the AFC Championship game, that was a back and forth game, and it took overtime for him to beat Kansas City. So with a rookie quarterback in Mac Jones, who, trust me, I think he is the future. He is going to be your starting quarterback for a long time. I see he has it in him, but let's remember he's a rookie right now. So it's going to be tough for him to go out there against this loaded team, and the weapons that the Patriots brought in the offseason just have not been what we expected. Jonnu Smith has had a rough start to this season. And Hunter Henry, he made a nice catch down the seam a couple weeks ago against the Jets. That's really it. Those tight ends haven't done what they were brought here to do and be playmakers. And then Nelson Aguilar had a good first game against Miami. That's been it since then. And Jacoby Myers is the one good constant weapon that you've had. And then now you just lost James White. So the Patriots are in a tough position and a precarious position where they're going to have to really scratch and claw here. And like I said, one of the few ways that I could see them winning or not winning, but keeping this a close game, like I said, is ball control, run it down their throats. Although this Bucs team is arguably the best run defense. Right? I think statistically they're the fourth or third best run defense in the game right now. So it's going to be really hard to do that against this Bucs team. But that's going to be, if you get Trent Brown back, then I like this. Even as bad as his offensive line has played, they have a lot of talent there. And last couple of years, they've been really good. I like the unit. It's just it's just without Trent Brown in there, we're having to move pieces around. The backups aren't great. So it's going to be difficult for this Patriots team to try to run the ball if they don't have Trent Brown. And even if they have Trent Brown, it's going to be really hard for them as well. So I just don't see how they're going to be able to get any type of offense going on the ground. So you're going to have to make sure that maybe you play those short passes, those screen plays to basically kind of be your run and control the offense that way. Now, the only risk with trying to do a ball control offense with passing, short passing game, screen passing, is that if you have an incomplete pass, then that stops the clock for you. Running the ball is a guarantee keeping the clock moving. So to me, I think it's going to have to be a combination of those short passes, screen passes, and then try to run it, keep the ball out of Brady's hands as long as possible. I mean, not St. Louis Rams, but the Los Angeles Rams were able to do that. But again, they have a stacked offense in LA. So again, that it's kind of apples and oranges there, but they were able to play a ball control offense with a loaded offense to keep it away from Tom Brady. And then when they needed to, they can make a deep strike down the field. Now that's the Patriots just don't have the weaponry on the outside. Like I said, I like the tight ends. They just need to show up and make plays like they can. Like I know they can. They just been absent from making those big not even chain moving, but those big chunk plays down the field. And in the receiving core, yeah, you brought in Nelson Aguilar because he has speed, but he really hasn't done that. He hasn't done even that this year. In the Miami game, it was more possession offense from Aguilar. So to me, it's going to be an uphill climb, and it's really you're going to have that defensive front seven really play the best game of their lives here against Brady. Because if you couple a ball control offense with that front seven, because we all know that Tom Brady does not like pressure right up the middle, and any pocket passer does not like pressure up the middle. But that's going to be the way for the Patriots to win this game, is to rush up the middle, keep Brady off his game and off his heels. And then, like I said, maybe you have a shot. They're still going to make their plays. But if you can get pressure up the middle and play ball control, maybe you keep this a touchdown to 10-point game. That's how I see this going positively. Now, if there's a miracle and you're able to play that way and then you win the game, then damn, I don't know what I'll do. If Tyler, if you're still out there listening, text me and maybe we can make some type of bet if they win, what we can do, or any of my listeners out there, we can see what's going on. Maybe we can come up with some type of bet if the Patriots actually pull this off, which I would be I'd be happier than hell if somebody gives me a bet and they want to take the Patriots in this one. Hit me up. But I just don't see a way. But if they do what I just described, to probably be the best way for them to do it would be getting pressure up the middle. Easier said than done, but you have Matthew Judon, Hightower, Van Noy. I like what I've seen out of Barmore. And if you can get Josh Uche back, then I really like that front seven. And I think you have what it takes to get pressure on, because the Tampa Bay offensive line is decent. It's good, but I don't think it's great. So I think you can get pressure on Brady. It's just a matter of, will Brady, if you give him 22, 23 minutes, is he going to make those plays, which I think he can. And without Gilmore, it's going to be tough to get maybe that big pick at the end of the game if it's close, to try to give it back to Mac Jones. But if you kind of snap back to reality, yeah, I don't know, Tyler. 5K, that's a lot of goddamn money. we'll see. We'll see. Maybe a smaller bet. We'll see. I'll text you and we'll see what we can do. But anyways, I just to me, if you kind of go back to reality, if the best outcome possible in all reality here, I think, is going to be if the Patriots keep this close, keep this maybe a 30, because I think the Bucs will put up 30 plus. I think if you can keep this a 34-24 game, maybe even 34-28, where this is late, that's where I think you can take positives out of this if you can keep it close, and especially if Mac Jones comes into the game, he doesn't put up a clunker like he did against the Bucs. So we'll see. But if he can go out there, go over 300 yards, and not just when he has to open it up, because of course, like I said, you want ball control, so you got to dink and dunk. But what I'm saying is that, like, when you get into those long situations, or you get in a situation where you get into the red zone, you make those big plays. You don't have what you've seen the last couple of weeks, where it's just kind of been where he's been good against the Dolphins. He was good against the Jets. You saw glimpses of it, but you want to see maybe them start to open this up a little bit more, where I said where he can get over 300 yards, where maybe you give him some deep down the field play action, but this time instead of just throwing it short, a 10-yarder to Jonnu Smith, maybe you look down the field and you have Aguilar, you have Hunter Henry, that's 20, 25 yards, 30 yards down the field, you hit him, and then maybe you get that touchdown out of that. So I think if you start to see that, where you see Mac Jones play really well, that's where I'm going to feel great about. Even though I hate moral victories, I honestly do. You sound like such a schmuck when you have to oh yeah, the Patriots played well and Mac Jones came out and defense played well. But when you play a team when you play a guy like Brady, when you play a team like the Bucs, it's absolutely loaded, and you have a rookie starting for you, you're going to have bumps in the road. Like I said, I think this team's going to get a wild card spot. I don't think they're going to end up going far, but you have a rookie. So this is just one of those building blocks where if you see him come out of this game and play well, then that's gravy for the Patriots. But honestly, though, I just don't see the Patriots pulling this one out. Like I said, if I won't give you $5,000, Tyler, but I'll think of something. Maybe I'll buy you a really nice steak dinner somewhere. I don't know. I'll get you a nice dry aged ribeye somewhere. I don't know. We'll figure this out. But if they could pull this out, I'd be more than shocked. But this is just kind of, you have to look at this as a building block game for the Patriots. That's all you really have to do. You just kind of really have to hope that they don't get absolutely curb stomped in this game, like the Patriots used to do the Jets on Monday Night Football when they win 45-3. All right, we can do a T-bone. I'll get you a dry aged T-bone, or I'll get you a really nice one. I'll get you something good. So that's a bet, Tyler. We'll bet on that one, a T-bone steak. So the Pats win, you get a T-bone, guaranteed. Virtual handshake. There we go. There's the camera. So that's a deal. The Pats win, you get a T-bone. So over to a more, I guess, depressing situation, if you want to look at it that way. The Red Sox, who had a golden opportunity against the not Toronto Blue Jays, but against the Baltimore Orioles, who absolutely are god awful. They've played like dog shit all year long, which, I mean, you have to expect it. It's the Baltimore Orioles. They haven't been good since 2014, the last year of Showalter, when they made the playoffs, and you had Batista flipping his bat in their faces. So that was the last time they were good. Ever since, they've been absolute dog shit. So now the Baltimore Orioles, who are on pace to lose over 105 games, they are beating they beat the Red Sox in game 1. The Red Sox took game 2. Now the Red Sox, into the top of the 7th inning, are down 6-1. They do have 2 men on with nobody out, but still, to struggle against this team where you had an opportunity, where you're a game ahead of the Blue Jays, you're half game ahead of the Mariners, who I thought were dead and buried, honestly. Thanks, Oakland, for showing up, you jackasses, for not doing anything against the Mariners last series. But anyways, you have the Mariners breathing down their neck, a half game behind. Although the Blue Jays did win, so now you have to root for the Yankees, as awful as that sounds. I got to go wash my mouth out with some type of alcohol right now, because God, that did not sound good saying that. But now you have to root for the Yankees to lose against the Blue Jays, so that at least you kind of keep that whole 2 wild card pool, keep that all muddied up, so that at least if the Red Sox, God forbid, don't come back in this game against the awful Orioles, then maybe you at least feel better that the Yankees lose. You'd be still a game behind, and then going into the last 3 games against the Washington Nationals, who are not as bad as the O's, but are just as awful. You would have to, at this point, you have to sweep them. You have to sweep. You can't not sweep the Nationals. If you don't get a sweep against the Nationals, your season's done. You're cooked. You're done. You're over. So I just don't see any way possible. I just don't see if they lose this one tonight. If you don't win against them, you're gone. So it's just been depressing trying to watching the Red Sox over this last week or so, because you had a 7-game win streak. Was it fool's gold? Maybe. This Red Sox team who for the longest time, I told you to be excited. I told you that this was going to be a great team. And then we all know the story. We've rehashed this probably over the last 5 podcasts. So I know you guys probably at this point are sick and tired of hearing about the trade deadline and how bad they've been after. But they still have, even after their gigantic slump and their bullpen imploding and the defense just been god awful, they still have had an opportunity to take the top wild card spot, or at least the second wild card spot. And they're still trying every which way to kick this thing away. They've had the driver's seat in the number 1 seed, and they just continue to lose against teams they shouldn't. So that's what's so depressing watching this team against Baltimore. It's just that you're getting this game, you're getting your lunch handed. Pivetta got his lunch handed to him. The first game, Sale looked okay and then got his lunch handed to him. So it's just so depressing, so disappointing. It's like you should be beating this team. You at worst should be 5. I know there's still time to go in this game and they just scored another run. But if you can't pull this one out and if you lose, you at worst should have been 5-1. Should be 5-1 after this series, and then you play the Nats. If you go 4-2, or at work, if you go, God forbid, you go 3-3, oh boy, that's not going to be good. That's not going to be good at all. And the worst part over this whole stretch has just been twofold. It's been the defense, which has just at times looked like the bad news Bears. I've seen just as bad offense in my men's league at time. I don't know if that level, but it's just been like, you're a professional baseball player. How can you continually just boot this away? Let's go back to the Yankees series, the game 1. Yeah, the Red Sox were already down 4-1 at that point. The Yankees had a couple on. Then you had Kyle Schwarber, who should not be playing first. I love Kyle Schwarber, the addition to the lineup. He's been arguably the best bat that was added by any contender, because Anthony Rizzo, as much as I wanted him, he's cooled off. But Schwarber's been really good with the bat and getting on base. It's just there's nowhere to defensively stick him because you have JD Martinez, who basically is your full-time DH. So now you have to split time there. And it's just been, he played at first. That should have been an easy pop-up. It just drops in that Bermuda Triangle between the pitcher's mound, shortstop, and Schwarber at the time. It should have been an easy out. And then you've had countless other errors by guys that have been sure-handed throughout most of their career. That just, it's like, how do you continually at this point of the season, when you weren't this bad? Yeah, you could always talk about Rafael Devers or Xander Bogaerts not being Gold Glove winners, but they still were solid. But then just second base was an issue until you got Iglesias. First base has been a black hole defensively. Outfield hasn't been great either. So it's just been a whole stew of shit in the outfield when it comes to defense. So that has not been good. And then on top of that, the bullpen, which was locked down, has just all of a sudden just fallen apart. And I said it after the trade, after probably the first 2 weeks of their trade deadline, these guys are probably overused and overtaxed in the bullpen. That was probably the issue, because their starters were going, especially when Martin Perez and Garrett Richards were in the rotation, you were having guys going 3, 4, maybe 5 innings between those two. And then if you had a bad start from Pivetta, from Nathan Eovaldi, and then even if Tanner Houck would come up and whoever that fifth starter would be when they would rotate it, it was all pretty much just the bullpen from inning 4, 5, and 6 on. So you had a lot of nights where you're putting a lot of use in a bullpen. When you're locked down for the first half of the season, I just always had a little bit of suspicion that that might come back to bite them. Now, I didn't think that everybody in the bullpen was just going to implode all at once. And that's pretty much what it seemed like. You went from having about 6 guys that anybody would want in that pen to 6 guys that pretty much now are gassed, injured, or wouldn't want to use. Hernandez has come back. He's looked decent. Garrett Whitlock, who I still long-term, he's a absolute steal for this organization. Absolute steal. But he's injured. He looks like he's working his way back. He's had his bumps over this last month and a half of the season. But he's the one guy that I think you still can rely on once he comes back and once he's healthy. But like I said, he still had his moments. Matt Barnes, we all know the struggles he's had. He came back last week. He had a decent showing. I still wouldn't feel comfortable if you put him in as the closer come that 1-game wildcard playoff, or God forbid you even make it into the American League Division Series. If you had to have him as your closer, I still wouldn't feel comfortable. I'd feel better off putting Ottavino in there, but he still hasn't been locked down. He's gotten hit around a few times lately here. So like I said, I just think this comes down to a lot of guys getting gassed and having to throw a lot early in the year. And then now it looks like Josh Taylor is going to be out for the rest of the year. It doesn't look like it looks like his injury's gotten worse. You do have Ryan Brazier who's come back, but still I like Brazier. I've never been a huge fan of Brazier just because I think his fastball at times, yes, it can be 97, 98, 99, but there are times where it can be flat and guys can nail that thing. If he's on and it has a little bit of that late life and he's got his changeup, he's got his slider working, then he's a good pitcher. But there is just too many times where things are mechanically out of whack, or that fastball just is a little flat for him. And he just hasn't been what you thought that Brazier would be after he had that glimpse of it in 2018. And of course, this year you got to give him a little bit of a pass because he took that line drive right off the skull. So, I mean, come on, the man really has been struggling this year. So it's as far as physically. But to me, the two biggest things that I've been disappointed with this team has been that bullpen and the defense. Because offensively, they can still score their runs. Yeah, they've kind of hit a little bit of a slump here as a team, but you still have Kike Hernandez, who's developed into a pretty decent leadoff guy. We all know Rafael Devers, Bogarts, JD, and even throw Hunter Renfroe, who hit his 30th home run last night and has cut down on the strikeouts and has hit over 260 this year and close to and is over 90 RBI. So those 4 guys, and even Bobby Dahlbeck has been surprised. Trust me, I was getting frustrated with Bobby. I probably even 4 weeks ago, I was in that mode of, now, if you could find somebody to replace Bobby, if anybody would be better. But Bobby really has turned it around, and he's been good. So throw those 4 or 5 guys right there, you have a really good middle of the order. And then if you have Verdugo, if he can find his way back to where he was in that first 3 months of the season, then that really gives you a long lineup. It's just it's the rest of the team. It's been the bullpen and the defense is what worries me, because Chris Sale, he's not the old Chris Sale yet, and you can't expect him to be when this is his first 2 months back from Tommy John surgery. Nathan Eovaldi has been a stud all year long for this team. Nick Pivetta has been up and down. He had a really good first half. It looked like they might have stolen him out of the Phillies organization, but it looks like that pumpkin's kind of been returned now at this point. But he'll have his good starts every now and then. And then Erod can throw a gem, and then Erod can turn back into Mr. Jekyll there, and he'll run off and put up a 6 spot, or give up a 6 spot, I should say. But once you get into if you can get back into the playoffs, if you get into the playoffs, then you can shorten down that rotation, have sale of all the. Maybe you probably throw Houck into the bullpen because I would rather see Houck in the bullpen because he can give you if you shorten him up and give him high leverage situations. I actually trust him more than I do some of the relievers, which is telling. So we'll see how that goes. But it's just I'm just worried about the defense in the bullpen come the wild card game, and if they can get out of that wild card game, if how it's going to go in a 5-game series. It's just I don't have confidence in the defense and the bullpen anymore. And come playoff time, those are vital. After the starting pitching, the bullpen's the next, and the defense would be after that. Not that hitting isn't, but in major leagues, that's more important. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I still think the Red Sox hold on just by the skin of their teeth. I think they'll get a wild card spot. If you ask me today, I think they still get the number 1 seed just because I just don't see the Yankees ending up winning out. I don't see I don't see Toronto getting in because they have a little bit of tougher schedule. To me, it's going to be Seattle and New York that I think end up vying for those with the Red Sox for the wild card spot. And I think maybe Seattle might fall off. So it's going to be a matter of New York in these last, if you count tonight, 4 games, and then after tonight, 3 games, how they go. So it's you just have to hold on here, and you just have to hope that you can come back tonight, and you hope that you can put up some runs here late in this game, and then scorch the Nationals, because this has just been disappointing. It's like you had a silver platter of a last 6 games, and so far you're 1-1 against Baltimore. So hopefully they can hold on to it. If not, this is going to be this would be so disappointing, so disappointing. Now to a little bit lighter here, fair to wrap up the show. We'll go over some fantasy advice for you. So I know a lot of my listeners here play fantasy football. I know every week I always ask you to give me your questions, give me some of your lineup conundrums that you have going into the week. And right now, we're going to go over some trade targets for you. Some guys to target that maybe some studs, or normally they're studs, but they've gotten off to some slow starts here in the first 3 weeks. Maybe you need to fill that first running back. Maybe your running back got hurt. Maybe you just have a disappointing running back yourself that you might have, or you cheaped out, and you loaded up in other positions. For running back, wide receiver, wherever it may be, maybe you loaded up in some other area and you have a plethora of receivers, plethora of running backs, whatever it may be, and you have something to trade. We'll look into that here. Now, my first target for you. Now, maybe after the Monday night game, it might be a little bit more difficult to get a hold of him, but my target, number 1, is going to be Ezekiel Elliott. Now, Zeke, coming into this season, there were some rumors that maybe he was not losing a step, but maybe he's not the same Zeke that he used to be. And now that this Cowboys offense is loaded with CeeDee Lamb, and then you have Amari Cooper, as well as Gallup, and then Tony, even if you want to throw in Tony Pollard, that could take some snaps away. There was some concern there that maybe he might not get as big of a workload. But I've always been a proponent for Zeke, even in a kind of a slower. I mean, even if this offense is loaded, I just think that gives him more opportunity when you have all those receivers and you have a decent tight end. I think it just opens it up for Zeke, and you don't have to lay all of the responsibility on him. So I think that that's where I think I like him more than some people do in that spot. I know he still went high, but if you're in a league where the Elliott owners are getting frustrated with him, even after he put up a good Monday night game where he rushed for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns, caught 3 balls for 21. But the first week I know it was Tampa, but he rushed for 33 yards, only caught 2 passes. week against the Chargers, it was a little bit better. He rushed for 77 yards and 1 touchdown, caught 2 passes. But you're probably used to Zeke when he was a rookie and probably those first 3 years of his career where he was an absolute stud. But if you run into somebody that maybe they're getting frustrated with Zeke, they might have some what they would consider better options at running back, or maybe they got lucky and they're in a keeper league and they have maybe a Kamara or a Barkley or who knows, somebody else partnered with him and they're frustrated and they need some help at wide receiver. Maybe you look into packaging a really good wide receiver and maybe another second tier one or third tier or whatever else you have, and maybe throw in a draft pick there, and you might be able to get Zeke for a decent cost. And then you start in, because I think that Zeke, because now he goes into playing Carolina, which they're a little bit better against the run, but then he has to then they have the Giants, New England. We'll see how that goes, because I know a lot of people think New England has beefed up the run defense, but they haven't played well against the run this year. So the schedule looks pretty good for Zeke here. So I think there are going to be some good games coming down the pipe here for Zeke to couple it with that Monday night game. So that's a guy that I think you should go target. He could be a league winner for you, obviously. Now, as far as other targets to go look at, another one here that I have for you would be A.J. Brown. Now, I know there's going to be some injury concerns with A.J. Brown, but to me, this is one where even more so than Zeke, there's been there's been a little bit of frustration there, because with how the first week with A.J. Brown, week 1, he put up a okay game, 4 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown. So that was a decent game. That touchdown saved his game. If he didn't get that touchdown, you're looking at, if you're in a PPR league, you're probably looking at 8, maybe close to 9 points there. Not great. The week 2 in Seattle, he ends up getting only 3 catches for 43 yards. So pretty much he's averaging 43 yards. And then I know now he's been dealing with an injury, dealt with that injury last week, and it looks like he might not be in for this week. But this is a guy that I think if you trade for him now, once he gets healthy, and I know there have been some concerns with how Mike Vrabel and that Tennessee offense has been kind of operating and how they've been running it. But I think this is somewhere, if you're patient with A.J. Brown, you maybe make an offer with a running back or a tight end or some top tier one of those. If you desperately are starved for a star receiver, I think this is where you could get A.J. Brown and try to pick him off somebody's lineup, because I think this is a guy, because this week obviously it doesn't sound like he's going to be there, but then he gets Jacksonville, then you get Buffalo, Kansas City, and especially Jacksonville. That's a team where he could blow up against. And then Indy. So I think this is where, even with Julio Jones there, who's really been great for them so far, I think this is where you can get A.J. Brown at a decent price, and you'll have somebody that you can stack right in your lineup and give you that juice that you're desperately in need at the wide receiver position. Now, here's one that I pounced on personally when it comes to finding a trade. Well, mine was a little bit different, but I ended up picking him off the waiver wire. But if you're in a league where Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers' supposed number 1 wide receiver, is still on the board as far as, is still on a team where last week he finally got into the end zone. He finally had a solid game where he had 4 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown, and then had 23 return yards. Yeah, is it great? Was it Brandon Ayuk that we saw down the stretch where he had over 700 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns, and looked like he was going to be prone for a breakout this year? No, but at the same time, that he's on the right track. If you're in a PPR league, he probably scored you about 13 to 15 points. About that. So now you have, excuse me, this is where I think you can definitely buy low. This is where you can pick him off. And because I think this guy, I think he showed last week, all right, we have your trust back. Now we'll start throwing to you more as far as what Kyle Shanahan would be able to do. I think Shanahan was last week kind of gave him more opportunities to say, all right, this is not your last chance. Certainly not that, but this is like, all right, maybe if you don't pick it up this week, we might have to go away from you from a couple weeks and then kind of pick it back up maybe 2-3 weeks from now and see what we have in you, because we have other weapons that we have to go to. But I think this is where you finally started to see some good progress here for Brandon Ayuk. And if he's on waiver wire, certainly go pick him up. But like I said, if he's on somebody's roster, I would trade in a heartbeat for him. Definitely do it. Because I think this is a guy that could be your number 2, number 3 wide receiver, depending on how many you play. And he could end up being a number 1 wide receiver in this San Francisco offense and be really productive as we head down the stretch. And then finally, my last player here to target is Ryan Tannehill. Now, Ryan Tannehill has been disappointing so far from a fantasy standpoint, and really in reality here. First couple weeks, only threw for 212 yards. He didn't get a lot of his rushing yards, did get 2 touchdowns out of it, but wasn't great. Threw an interception, only threw the 1 touchdown. Week 2, he threw for 347 yards, ran for 27, but didn't have any touchdowns. Even though they won, that was pretty much the Derrick Henry show against Seattle. And then last week was the first solid week that he had threw for 197, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, and ran for 56 yards. So what I think with Tannehill here, just like I said with A.J. Brown, once this team becomes more confident, once they learn what they have with Julio and what they have with A.J. Brown and see what they can do, then I think Tannehill is going to start to take off here. Maybe not be what Brady has down in Tampa Bay, but I think you'll start to see him put up some bigger fantasy days. And then maybe that gives him a little bit more rushing as well if those two are able to take off, and then Derrick Henry is doing Derrick Henry things and being a beast. So this is somebody there that if you're struggling at quarterback, maybe you picked up somebody like let's just say somebody in New England, like Mac Jones. You tried to bank on that. Maybe you're in a deep league where you don't have a lot of quarterback depth. You're forced to go with maybe a Jared Goff or somebody like that, or hell, maybe one of the Bears quarterbacks. You were stuck in that situation. So now you have to find somebody kind of on the cheap that you might be able to scrounge up and hit some gold with. And I think that would be Ryan Tannehill, because I think this Tennessee offense is going to start to hit its stride here. They're going to start to figure things out once they get guys back and healthy on this team. So those are your trade targets to go out and get, or if they're on waiver wires, to go and spend your FOB, your fake money, and try to get those guys. So that was the show for this week, folks. I hope you enjoyed the Brady return special, the Patriots Armageddon, if you will, as it's going to be an exciting week. Definitely next week we will cover the aftermath of Patriots Armageddon, of the return to Foxborough from Tom Brady. And of course, we will have you covered for the Red Sox if they make it to the wild card round, and if they make it to the American League Division Series, we'll break that all down. Or if they somehow shoot themselves in the foot even more and they don't end up making the wild card round, then we will break down their end of the season as well. And then, of course, it's getting to preseason time in the NHL and NBA, so we'll break that down if there are any big stories that come out of that. And, of course, as always, welcome. Thank you for watching the show here on YouTube. All shows are normally they're on Wednesday nights from starting at 8 o'clock. This week I had to move it around, had some things going on. But as always, you can catch the live stream at 8 p.m. Wednesday nights. then you can, if you can't listen to it then go on to Spotify or on SoundCloud and hit the like and subscribe button there for the show, and do the same here on YouTube. You could use all the help you can get. But again, hit the like and subscribe anywhere you find this on any platform. Hope you had a good week. And remember, follow me at Sean_Met on Instagram and on Twitter, or the show account on Twitter at NE Sports Weekly. All right, folks, you have a good week, and hopefully you survive the Brady apocalypse on Sunday.